let's get into season 10 of Love is Blind, or as our boy Nick Lachey likes to say, season 10, Ohio. Wait. Trigger warning, this video is filled with spoilers, including the reunions. All right, I'm gonna break this down couple by couple, and I'm gonna get into the fact that love is not blind, but it is a little bit political, and it seemed so fitting that this season would take place in Ohio, which is notoriously a swing state, and coming off of a very contentious election, there was a lot of political talk in this season. But before we get into that, my main takeaways from this season were that there were so many more couples than the last season. I mean, coming off of Denver, where we had very few couples leave the pods, and then we had no marriages. We then ended up with 7 couples, so many couples that apparently they couldn't fit them all in Mexico. So Vic and Christine had to go to Malibu for their honeymoon, or I should say pre-honeymoon. But I'm not totally buying that story. One of my other takeaways was that you can tell that these producers were very stressed this season and trying to make sure that they had more content. They were like, we are blowing all of our budget on licensed music and drapes. Because I don't know if I'm the only one that noticed, but all the weddings had so many freaking drapes all around for decor. It was like they went to Joann Fabrics and they put Joann Fabrics out of business single-handedly. It's probably the reason why Joann's bankrupt. They just ran out of fabrics because Love is Blind from all this drapery that was covering all the weddings. They couldn't even see each other. These producers were stressing. They were like, after last season's colossal failure of a season, we really have to pull it out this year. We don't even care if these people like each other. They are getting to the altar whether they like it or not. And starting off hot, we have Vic and Christine, our first couple. Now, spoiler, they not only end up married, but they are still happily married. This was the most lovely yet boring couple this season, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Boring in the fact that they didn't really have drama. They seemed to genuinely love each other, really appreciate each other, and it really spilled into the reunion. I loved them at the reunion. So we've seen in the past a lot of couples throughout this experiment where they talk about how, you know, they're Christians and they're believers, but then when they leave the pods, they don't really talk about their faith ever again. Whereas I have to say, this was one of the most genuine couples. They talked about their faith not only in the pods, but throughout the entire season and in the reunion. And I'm not gonna lie, I got a little emotional at the reunion when Vic was talking about the fact that he feels like God genuinely put Christine in his care to be his wife, and how much that meant to him, because it wasn't just about their marriage, but it was about the covenant that they made with God. And it was so incredibly cool to hear him talk about his faith, to talk about God on such a grand national stage. And also, this is really cool. So just this morning, Kaylee McEnany had them on her show. She now hosts a morning show on Fox.
Here they are, and I'm meeting them for the first time. Christine, I have to give you a
hi. So nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you, Vic. So nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
I love the example of faith and just the Bible and Christianity that you've said. It's just really powerful, and like, what a pleasure and an honor to interview you guys.
Thank you so much.
Now moving on to Amber and Jordan. Amber was the only single mom on this season. Now I do have a hot take, which is that people who have kids should not go on Love is Blind. Even hotter take, I don't think people that have kids should go on any dating reality TV show. Statistically speaking, it never works out, at least on Love is Blind. We have now had back-to-back seasons where single parents have gone on the show and neither of them are still with the person they matched with. And it just seems unfair to put their kids, especially their young kids, through this awkward social experiment for it to not work out. And then there's forever documentation of it on Netflix. Going to the reunion, it's pretty quickly revealed that they are no longer together. And Jordan, you could tell, is kind of beating around the bush when he's asked about why they're not together. And then Amber comes in hot with some BS about how it was Jordan's fault. He clearly wasn't ready for the commitment of marriage. He didn't even want to commute or move to be near her because they live so far away from each other, and it's actually not so far away. I was laughing because even in the pods, they were talking about how far they lived from each other. It turns out that they only lived 45 minutes away from each other, which, coming from Southern California, that is like a solid normal commute in SoCal. So I thought that was kind of funny that she tried to make it seem like that was the reason they weren't working out, was his immaturity. And then you could tell he was trying to bite his tongue for a while, and he finally comes out and admits that they did not work out because she had a lot of issues that came out later on after the experiment was done. So apparently she has a lot of insecurities from past relationships, and she would get very angry with him. They had a lot of volatile fights, and they get even more angry when she was drinking, to the point of them going to a wedding, and she showed up blacked out, fell asleep at the table. He ended up having to put her into a car and take her keys away so that she could sleep asleep. Then she woke up in the car, ended up taking Uber back to her house. It was a whole hot mess. And then she had the audacity to then get mad at him and say that it was still his fault because he didn't see things through long enough, that he didn't give her enough time to change. And then he comes out and admits that he gave her like 2 or 3 months after these issues really came to a head. And when she made absolutely no changes to improve, he realized that it was kind of a lost cause. And that's when he broke things off. And then it was even more awkward because she kind of showed her true colors when she got angry at him, started yelling at him on stage, and then stormed off the stage because she was so angry. A hot mess. And this was also a major red flag, was Amber was kind of part of this liberal feminist girl group between Jessica, the doctor, Emma, I'm trying to think who else, Brittany, and they were all rooting for her. And they said that actually, Amber came into the pods hating men because of her old experiences, and she was a bona fide man hater, which makes me wonder, why the hell did she go on a dating show to date men if she hated them so much going into this experiment? I feel like she was destined for failure just with that mindset. Moving on to Chris and Jessica. Jessica was the really cute doctor, obviously very liberal, which we'll get into. And then Chris was the guy who broke up with her because she apparently did not work out enough. He wanted someone who worked out every day or did Pilates every day, which is kind of funny because if you looked at this guy, I don't think anyone would take him for a notorious gym rat. He just seemed very unaware of the circumstances at play here. I mean, he had a very successful, cute doctor who was super into him. He seemed really into her too when they were in Mexico and they were dating. And then for him to just have a complete 180 one day on the couch and break up with her because she didn't work out enough, it was very bizarre. So it's interesting because this is one of the first seasons that we've seen contestants openly talk about their politics. And Jessica recently took to social media and did an interview where she talked about how she distinctly went into the pod saying she could not date anyone that voted for Trump.
I specifically asked everyone, like, did you vote for Trump? Are you a Trump supporter? And I talked just ad nauseum about human rights because that is such a pillar of my life and what I believe in and who I am and the people that I love. It's something that I feel very blessed to feel so strongly about because it's a great filter. And so I made that extremely clear. This is not the only man who has just straight up lied about what he believed in to gain access to me.
You gotta love how she is pretty manipulative in how she frames her, reasoning for this. She says, she is so passionate about human rights and she's blessed to share those values, alleging that basically if you are a Trump supporter, you do not believe in human rights. You're probably a horrible person if you don't. And that's kind of how she's framing this. I like how she does it. And a lot of liberals do this. It's a lot of kind of, emotional manipulation where, well, we believe in human rights. And if you disagree with us for whatever reason, you're a horrible bigot is kind of what she's getting at. But I thought it was funny. She also mentioned that, Chris lied about his political beliefs in order to, quote, gain access to her. And it makes me wonder if he did actually lie and he was a closet Trump supporter. He may have been. It sounds like he's not the most trustworthy guy to begin with. But also part of me wonders if he just really didn't care about politics that much going into the experiment. Maybe he thought when she said she was liberal that, she was just kind of a classic liberal. I mean, there's a whole spectrum when it comes to conservatives and liberals. As we know, a classic liberal at this point is basically a Republican. And then you have the far left that is basically a bunch of socialists who are chill with transing kids and things like that. So maybe he realized after dating her that, oh, she was way more liberal than he thought, because apparently he did tell her, you are very lib. I was laughing because I wanted to find out if he actually was conservative, and all I saw was this article. So I was cracking up when I got this tab article that basically said, revealed, the right-wing accounts Love is Blind's Chris Fusco follows on Instagram. And of course, everyone's assuming that he is a right-wing extremist because he follows Donald Trump on Instagram, lives in TikTok, and my girl, Emily Saves America. Side note, Emily and I have been friends on social media for a couple years. I think she's so funny. I don't agree with her on everything politically. Actually, Jessica would probably have a heart attack because I am a lot more right and conservative than Emily is. But she's kind of like the gateway to conservative politics. There's a lot of celebrities that follow her. She's got a huge audience. So it's kind of cracking up that she popped up on this website. He completely looked like a fool this season, and he seemed pretty down and remorseful at the reunion. Now, if this is genuine or not. We'll see. Also, another very hot take that I have is, Jessica basically went into the pods and weeded out Trump supporters. And I actually think that was a smart tactic. My hot take is you should not date people that do not share the same political views as you. You either have to have someone that you are aligned with politically, or you have to date someone that genuinely does not care about politics at all. Otherwise, you're kind of setting yourself up for disaster. I know it used to be pretty common to not talk about religion or politics when you're dating. Nowadays, it's almost impossible to avoid. So I feel like if you are out there and you're single right now and dating, just get it out of the way. Honestly, whether it's before you even go on your first date or at your first date, have that hard conversation so that you don't grow feelings for someone that you're just not aligned with values-wise. To wrap up Jessica's story, she's now dating another guy who was in the pods that was at the reunion in the audience. He also is a doctor. He's a cute Indian guy. I think he's Indian, Middle Eastern, don't cancel me. But anyways, I'm a little sketched out by this guy. I just felt like he gave this whole rehearsed speech and it seemed so phony. Like, this guy really likes the limelight. It also turns out that he is an aspiring influencer on top of being a doctor. I don't know, go check out his Instagram. It was a little interesting. Moving on to our next couple, we have Emma and Mike. Now, Emma was adopted from China. She's the girl that had the large birthmark across her arm and part of her body. She had to have a lot of surgeries growing up. And basically their whole storyline was that she didn't know if she wanted to have kids because of her upbringing, whereas Mike knew that he definitely wanted to have kids, and somehow they still ended up engaged out of the pods, which made absolutely no sense, especially considering they showed Emma a lot through the pods. And it seemed like Mike was basically her third choice. And to be honest, Mike, I don't really know much about Mike besides the fact that he wanted to have kids and is Italian, because that was a huge part of his family's storyline, was the fact that they were just so Italian, and they tried to make it seem like being Italian was such a crazy cultural difference for Emma. Like, there was that awkward, lunch that they had with his family where she admitted that she didn't know if she wanted to have kids. So immediately his mom was like totally writing her off. And then they kept talking about, we're so Italian, like, we don't call it sauce, we call it gravy. And they were basically like, are you going to have a hard time acclimating to our culture? In which Emma was basically like, yeah, I was born an orphan in China and somehow acclimated to American culture. I'm pretty sure I can handle some pasta on a Sunday. Now, I will say, in terms of the whole debate whether they should or shouldn't have kids, first off, they should have never made it out of the pods, knowing that they weren't aligned on that issue. And I don't fault her. You are going to see a lot of conservative commentators that are constantly telling people they all need to get married and have kids. And I'll be honest, I don't think that everyone is meant to get married, let alone not everyone is meant to be a parent. But especially for people that have some sort of childhood trauma like Emma had, I am very sympathetic, and I totally understand why she may not want to be a parent, and that is okay. Or if she does, maybe adoption is the route for her. But she doesn't have that figured out yet, and I don't think her putting Mike in a situation where they were going to get engaged made any sense. And as much as we all wanted to hate on Chris this season, let's be honest, there was another villain, and that was Emma's sister. There is this excruciatingly difficult scene to watch where Emma is sitting down with her family and Mike, and Emma's sister, who has 2 young kids, says on national television that if she could do life all over again, she would not have kids. And she tries to say that she doesn't regret her kids, but if she would do it all over again, she wouldn't have them, which is essentially saying that you regret them. Then they show her 2 young kids running towards her with so much love and adoration in their eyes after she just said this horrific thing on Netflix. Now, I have to be honest, being a mom is tough. I have 3 young kids, 4 years and under myself. So if anyone can empathize with the fact that raising kids, especially young children, is tough, it's me. But raising kids and being a mother or a father is one of the most rewarding things you can do with your life. Genuinely, you grow so much as a person. The love and fulfillment that you get from having children outweighs any other challenge that you've ever done in your entire life. And this is what frustrates me about modern society, is it's so easy to hate on motherhood. Ali Bestecki coined the term toxic mom culture, which is just ravaging social media these days, where moms just take to the internet to basically crap on their kids. Sad to see, because I think people that are genuinely happy are typically people who are genuinely grateful, and they have gratitude for the fact that they are able to have kids. I mean, I can't imagine. I know so many people in my personal life that are struggling with IVF and fertility, and I can't imagine seeing this mom with 2 adorable young kids on national television basically talk about how much she regrets them. It's just such a shame. Like, nowadays, it's ironic because liberal feminists will tell women there's nothing they can't do, but then when it comes to motherhood, they just talk so negatively about it. or just critique them for why they chose that path versus living for themselves, because we kind of live in this, self-consumed, self-obsessed society nowadays. Emma actually says yes to marrying Mike and tries to tell him that, she was ready to have kids with him after a couple of weeks, and good on Mike for standing his ground. And he didn't say yes because he didn't know that it was genuine that she wanted to have kids with him. And I would have felt the same way, because he was saying that, emotions are heightened. You're staying at the altar. You've got your family and friends there. He didn't want her to say yes in that moment and then later on change her mind, or later on end up having kids with him and regretting it. All right, next we've got Ashley and Alex, who I like to call Mr. LinkedIn. I mean, my initial reaction was, wow, this is perfect. These are two attractive people that seem to be aligned politically. They're both Trump supporters. This is great. But no, she made the fatal mistake of being a blonde instead of a brunette. I mean, that was one of the many issues they had, along with trust issues. So apparently Alex was not attracted to her, even though she is conventionally very beautiful. And then it got even more bizarre, because every time she would ask him questions about his past and dating and even where he lived, he could not give her a straight, normal answer. It was also very funny because all he talked about this entire season was his previous life as a soccer player, and he was supposed to make it pro, but then he got injured, yada yada. He talked about soccer a lot. And then he also talked about how much he hated Ohio, wanted to get out of Ohio and live in either Arizona or Florida, when this was in fact, Love is Blind, Ohio. Every time this guy talked, he seemed to sound like a LinkedIn profile update. Like, he just did not talk like a normal person. Whenever he was asked simple questions, he would, kind of respond very long-winded and not actually answer the simple question that was asked. He would be like, well, realistically, hypothetically, if I weren't to say, and I did live in, Austin. I was in Austin. I lived in Austin. I was there a few times. Why do you keep asking me about Austin? Like, he would always get so defensive and have these long-winded, kind of rehearsed answers. So I don't blame her for having a lot of doubt in him. And then we come to find out at the reunion that Alex is not only living in Arizona, but he's roommates with Devontae. I want to touch on Bri and Connor. So Bri and Connor did not even make it to the aisle. They ended up breaking up. I'm not gonna lie, I was not a huge fan of Bri throughout the show. I felt like she kind of seemed like she was still into Chris at points. She didn't seem really direct with Connor. When she would talk about her relationship, she basically talked about how much she loved Connor because of how much he loved her. I don't know if anyone noticed this. It was a lot of I and me, and she would say, I just love how much Connor loves me. He adores me. He treats me so well. He puts up with me. He's seeing me at my worst and he still loves me anyways, yada yada. So I don't know if she was going through some personal stuff or things with work. It seemed like there was stuff that they weren't showing us that obviously led to them breaking up. We find out at the reunion that they are still together and they are going strong. Also, there was a lot of drama at the reunion when it came to the girls. So like I said earlier, we kind of had the feminist girl group with Jess the Doctor, Brittany, Amber, and Emma. And then there was kind of a divide with Bri, Ashley, and this girl Priyanka, who they didn't really show much throughout the season. She didn't make it out of the pods, but she was kind of a friend of. Bri did an interview with Glamour magazine, which kind of gave us some insight into the politics at play between the friendships on the show, not just the relationships. So basically, a lot of people online were saying that Bri is not a girl's girl, and she tries to own up to the fact that she isn't a girl's girl. She is the girls that she likes type of girls, and apparently there was a lot of tension between her and the other women on the cast. She says the girls were very adamant about the type of girls that they are close to or like to be close to, and I felt ostracized right away. I felt really uncomfortable, even just in the pods to begin with, because of some identifiers that they were flagging with political views and what have you. So yeah, she said that she was pretty uncomfy, and it probably came down to the fact that these women were going to the pod saying they didn't want to date Trump supporters because they don't share the same values. And then you have Bri, who I think it's pretty obvious was a Trump supporter, who probably felt pretty ostracized. It's probably why she connected with Ashley and maybe even Priyanka. I don't know what Priyanka's political views are, but it's probably why she felt detached from some of the girls. Last but not least, we've got Brittany and Devontae. I mean, I feel like such a fool because I did not understand all of the hate that Devontae was getting this season. I felt like this guy was catching so many strays from the moment that they zoomed in on his feet when he was picking at his toes in Mexico. I didn't get it. I just thought he was kind of awkward. When they first saw each other, it didn't seem like either of them was physically attracted to the other person. And then he got a ton of heat online for saying that, he's normally just attracted to white girls. And no offense, but Brittany, her name's Brittany. She sounded like a white girl. So in the pods, he probably thought she's probably white. And then he came out and she was not what he expected. And vice versa. It didn't seem like she was into him either. And then randomly halfway through the season, she just became obsessed with him. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if she was just desperate to wear that wedding dress she had bought, or she found out how much he made, because apparently he makes good money. You wouldn't know because he drives like a Honda Civic. No offense, I used to drive a Honda Civic. But yeah, it was very, very bizarre to say the least. And then at the reunion, we find out that this guy is like one of the sketchiest people to ever come on the show. But I was laughing because even in Mexico, he obviously didn't seem into her, and he had an out. This lucky guy, his grandpa died, and he could have literally left the Mexico trip and gone home and quit the experiment. But no, he stuck around. I'm pretty sure he missed his grandpa's funeral for this chick that he wasn't even into, which made me wonder what his intentions actually were. And then I was cracking up because then at the reunion, they're showing clips of him living with Alex in Arizona, and they're playing soccer together, and he's dunking on Alex, and he's got all this energy and personality. And even Nick Lachey is like, where the hell was that personality this season? They end up breaking up before the wedding even happens. He's basically running out the door out of her condo. She's like Isla Fisher out of Wedding Crashers, like, I'll find you. Like, I'm thinking she is going to move in with this man, whether he likes it or not. Anyways, it turns out that he tells Brie, Ashley, and Priyanka that they have broken up. And so he crashes a girls' trip to Austin. Everything happens in Austin. And then when he's on the girls' trip, he tries to act like his Airbnb didn't work out, so he's got to stay with the girls. Very creepy dude. And then we came to find out that he had told Brittany that he was on a work trip. Super bizarre. And then it gets weirder because, like I said, we find out that he's living with Alex in Arizona. And then he also admits that he is also engaged and his fiance and him are expecting a child. And then they're like, is the fiance living in Arizona? He's like, no, she's living in my house in Ohio. And then there's no follow-up questions. I mean, at this point, Nick Lachey and Vanessa should have lost their jobs for not asking a follow-up question, because I've got a million other questions on why his baby mama / fiance is living in a completely different state than him. Anyways, Brittany dodged a bullet. They are just another prime example of the fact that love is not blind. Overall, really entertaining, fun season. I loved all of it. I'm following a lot of people on social media because I'm like, I feel like we got a lot of unanswered questions still coming off the reunion. Thank you for watching, and for more reality TV recaps, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.